What if the reason you feel stuck isn't because you lack effort, but because you lack perspective? Most people wake up and step into a world they did not design. They react, they respond, they follow routines, but they rarely pause to ask, am I moving with purpose or simply moving? In a world flooded with noise, urgency, and endless demands, strategic thinking has become rare, and that is exactly what makes it powerful. The most resilient minds, the ones who lead, create, and endure, do not chase every opportunity. They see the pattern beneath the noise. They position themselves before the storm arrives. They do not play the game harder. They learn to see the board clearer. Strategic thinking is not reserved for generals or CEOs. It is a discipline of the mind, a way to live deliberately, to act with foresight, and to move through life with calm precision. Whether in career, relationships, or inner battles, those who think strategically do not merely survive, they shape. This video is not just about tactics. It is a quiet invitation to step back, observe deeper, and begin thinking like the rare few who always seem one move ahead. You do not need to force your way through the world. You need to learn how to move through it wisely. If that idea speaks to you, stay with me. This journey may change the way you think forever. Chapter 1. What is strategic thinking? Most people live reactively. They make decisions from moment to moment, responding to events as they unfold, like a sailor constantly adjusting their sails to survive a storm without ever charting a destination. They operate with urgency, not vision. They move through challenges like chess players who only see the next move, never the board. But the great minds of history, the ones who shaped empires, built revolutions, and transformed industries, do not play this game. They do not wait to react. They anticipate. They prepare. They build positions of strength before the first move is even made. Strategic thinking is not merely a tactic to outmaneuver obstacles. It is not just cleverness or calculation. It is a way of seeing the world through the lens of cause and consequence, timing and intention. It is the quiet art of positioning, of aligning one's actions not only to immediate needs, but to the invisible horizon where future outcomes are born. It is a discipline of patience, of restraint, of awareness so sharp that even chaos becomes manageable. In a world obsessed with immediacy, strategic thinking feels almost rebellious. Modern culture glorifies instant gratification. Success is too often measured in daily clicks, viral moments, or quarterly numbers. We are taught to chase noise, to sprint toward every spark without ever asking if that path leads anywhere. But this constant motion leads to exhaustion, not wisdom. To be strategic is to resist that pull. It is to pause when others panic, to think deeply when others react blindly. It is to step back and ask not just what is happening, but why it is happening and what it will become. At its core, strategic thinking is the art of zooming out. Imagine climbing a mountain while others are racing through the valley. You move slowly, carefully, perhaps even unnoticed, but from the peak you see the entire terrain. You see dangers they cannot see. You spot opportunities they will miss. And when the time comes to move, your steps are not faster, but wiser. Each decision is aligned with a greater plan. That is the essence of strategy. It is not speed, it is direction. Many confuse strategy with tactics. A tactic is a single action, a short-term play designed to achieve an immediate goal, a discount to boost sales, a speech to calm dissent, a pivot to save face. But strategy is the architecture behind those tactics. It is the blueprint that ensures each move builds something enduring. Without strategy, tactics are scattered bricks. With strategy, they form a fortress. And those who build without one may appear productive, but they will tire from rebuilding the same wall over and over again. The true strategist sees beyond binary thinking. Where others ask, will this succeed or fail? The strategic mind asks, what is the probability this will succeed? And how can I raise those odds? This mindset is not rooted in certainty, but in probability. It understands that life is a field of unknowns, and the role of a thinker is not to demand guarantees, but to shape favorable conditions. A good strategist never bets everything on being right. They prepare for being wrong. They do not need every plan to succeed. They need to not be destroyed when a plan fails. To think strategically is to play the long game. While others chase applause or quarterly results, the strategist builds slowly and deliberately. They are willing to sacrifice applause today for a position of strength tomorrow. They understand that enduring success requires laying foundations that others overlook because they do not provide immediate reward. And often the true payoff is invisible for a long time, but when it arrives, it does so with such momentum that others mistake it for luck. Consider the Stoic general who resists the urge to retaliate after an insult. The crowd may see passivity, but the strategist sees positioning. He knows that true power is not in noise, but in timing. When the right moment comes, his action will land not just with force, but with finality. This is not weakness. This is preparation. Strategic thinkers do not just watch events. They study patterns. They observe how markets shift, how leaders rise and fall, how behaviors repeat across time. They learn from history, but they are not enslaved by it. They are not interested in simply copying what worked yesterday. They know that every context is unique. Instead, they extract the principle behind the action. They look at the structure behind the strategy. And most importantly, they adapt those principles to present realities. Adaptability is the soul of strategic thinking. Most people seek certainty. They want a map before they move. But strategy is a compass, not a script. It is the ability to move through uncertainty with clarity, to have a direction without needing a straight road. The Stoics taught that the world is beyond our control, but our response is always within it. Strategic thinking is that response made deliberate. It is our highest power expressed through calm, calculated movement. There is a myth that only geniuses or seasoned executives can think strategically. This is false. Strategy is not about IQ, it is about discipline. It is not about knowing everything. It is about questioning everything. It is the habit of stepping back before stepping forward, of examining assumptions rather than swallowing them, of asking not just what everyone else is doing, but whether what everyone else is doing is wise. Anyone can develop strategic thinking. But it requires shedding the addiction to urgency. It requires learning to sit with complexity, to tolerate the discomfort of incomplete information, to move even when certainty is not available. And above all, it requires the humility to update your thinking when the terrain shifts. The strongest strategist is not the one who is most stubborn, but the one who is most adaptable without losing sight of the destination. Some believe strategy is rigid, that once you decide, you must follow through no matter what. But this too is a misunderstanding. Strategy is not a cage. It is a structure that bends with the wind but does not collapse. A strong strategy includes contingency. It assumes change. And it empowers flexibility, not by abandoning vision, but by finding new routes toward it. The practice of strategy also involves the ability to think at multiple levels. Sometimes you must zoom into the details, study the fine print, analyze the small moves. But then you must pull back, see the full map. Ask whether each small move is taking you in the right direction. This dual vision, the ability to move between levels of thinking, is what allows the strategist to act with both precision and purpose. In Stoic terms, the strategist is the sage in motion, calm under pressure, clear under confusion, detached from praise, unmoved by insult. He does not chase results. He aligns with process. And by doing so, he becomes formidable, not through force, but through foresight. This mindset is not reserved for military leaders or corporate giants. It is just as necessary in personal life. Whether you are building a career, navigating a relationship, planning your finances, or managing your time, the ability to think strategically transforms the quality of your outcomes. It helps you avoid being ruled by impulse. It protects you from chasing what is easy and missing what is essential. It guides you toward actions that build real progress, not just motion. Let us take an example. Imagine two individuals with the same goal, financial freedom. One reacts emotionally to every market fluctuation, constantly buying and selling based on headlines, chasing what is hot. The other creates a strategy rooted in long-term thinking. They study, plan, and allocate not based on hype, but on structure. They do not move fast, but they move right. 10 years later, one is exhausted with little to show. The other has peace, clarity, and results. That is the power of strategy. As we begin this exploration into the art of strategic thinking, understand this. It is not a gift. It is not a talent. It is a mindset that anyone can cultivate. It begins by slowing down, by asking deeper questions, by resisting the rush to act, and instead learning to position, to think before you move, to examine before you decide, to prepare before you pursue. The chapters ahead will break down these principles further. We will explore how to anticipate obstacles, how to design flexible plans, how to evaluate probabilities, how to build resilience, and how to act with clarity even when others are paralyzed by confusion. You will learn frameworks, yes, but more importantly, you will learn how to see differently, how to lead yourself and others, not through force, but through foresight. Not through volume, but through vision. By the time this journey ends, you will not only understand strategy, you will live it. You will become the one others watch, not because you are louder, but because you are clearer. Not because you react faster, but because you move with purpose. The storms will not stop, but you will have a compass. And that makes all the difference, because in the end, the strategist is not the one who has all the answers. He is the one who sees the terrain more clearly, who moves more deliberately, and who builds not just for today, but for what is coming. He is the one who knows that every move is a message, every silence a signal, and every decision a brick in the foundation of a life that is not only successful, but unshakable. So ask yourself, not just what you want today, but what you are building, who you are becoming, and whether your next move serves only the moment or the mission. That is the beginning of strategic thinking. Chapter 2: The Core Principles of Strategic Thinking. Strategic thinking is not a distant concept locked within the halls of corporate boardrooms, military commands, or political negotiations. It is a living discipline, one that, when understood and internalized, becomes a force that sharpens your choices, strengthens your presence, and elevates every arena of your life. From professional advancement to financial independence, from relationships to long-term vision, strategic thinking is the foundation that turns blind ambition into deliberate progress. And it is not reserved for the brilliant or the elite. It belongs to those who are willing to think clearly, act slowly, and move with purpose. To think strategically is to look beyond the impulse of the moment. It is the act of pulling your attention away from temporary discomfort and immediate gratification and aiming it towards something greater. This does not require extraordinary intelligence. It requires disciplined clarity. It demands that you adopt a set of core principles, not as abstract ideas, but as daily practices that shape how you respond to pressure, opportunity, and uncertainty. These principles are not merely intellectual insights. They are weapons of the mind, used by those who refuse to live on autopilot. The first and most foundational principle of strategic thinking is the commitment to long-term vision while managing short-term execution. Most people are stuck in the urgency of now. They chase jobs that pay today but rob them of growth tomorrow. They enter relationships that satisfy desire but fracture under the weight of incompatibility. They throw money at trends that glitter briefly only to collapse with the next wave. A strategic mind pauses and asks a deeper question. What is this decision building toward? Is this a step forward or a step sideways? They measure choices not just by comfort, but by contribution. By asking how today's actions affect tomorrow's possibilities, they ensure that even their short-term moves align with the architecture of their long-term purpose. A young man once left a high-paying job because, although it paid well, it offered no future. His friends mocked him for letting go of such comfort. But he had studied the landscape. He had seen that the ceiling was low, the skills stagnant, and the path predictable. Instead, he chose a role that demanded more from him but developed strategic skills, industry knowledge, and long-term connections. 10 years later, those same friends were burnt out, still stuck, while he had risen with calm certainty. That is the power of seeing past the surface. The second principle is adaptability. Strategy is not a cage of fixed steps. It is a living structure that moves with reality. Many believe that once a plan is made, it must be followed at all costs. But this rigidity is not strength. It is blindness. Strategic thinkers are firm in their vision, but fluid in their methods. They adjust. They pivot. They revise without abandoning their purpose. When technology shifts, they learn. When markets evolve, they respond. When their approach no longer serves the mission, they abandon it without pride. The wise do not hold loyalty to plans. They hold loyalty to purpose. History teaches this through countless examples. The companies that survived revolutions were not those with the best ideas, but those with the fastest learning curves. Leaders who refused to adapt became relics. Innovators who challenged old models became legends. The Stoics taught us that control is an illusion, but preparation is not. And in a world that moves quickly, the ability to evolve without losing direction is a mark of true strategic excellence. Another principle, often overlooked yet profoundly critical, is understanding consequences beyond the first move. Many people make choices based only on what is immediately visible. They grab what is in front of them, never asking what lies behind it. But the strategic mind sees beyond the first wave. It asks not only what will happen now, but what will follow after. A decision is never singular. It is the beginning of a chain. Accepting a promotion might seem wise until you calculate the hours lost, the energy drained, and the relationships strained. Cutting costs might please shareholders briefly, but damage culture irreparably. Strategic thinkers ask, what does this choice cost over time? What are the second, third, and fourth order effects? They think like chess players, not gamblers. A wise commander does not merely look at the battle. He looks at the war. He does not rush into victory that will lead to strategic loss. He withdraws when necessary. He sacrifices short-term wins for ultimate dominance. This is not cowardice, it is control. Equally vital is the principle of calculated risk. Most people view risk in extremes. Some avoid it entirely, choosing safety so aggressively that they never move. Others pursue it blindly, seduced by thrill, drowning in overconfidence. Both are prisoners. The strategic thinker approaches risk like an engineer, not an adventurer. They ask, what can go wrong? How bad could it be? Can I survive it? What would I gain if it works? Then they act not out of hope, but probability. They mitigate, they prepare for failure before it arrives. And when it does, they are not shaken, they are ready. Entrepreneurs who endure are not reckless. They are precise. They do not leap in the dark. They build lanterns and study the terrain. It is not risk that makes them strong. It is their ability to balance danger with discipline. Another core mindset is to focus on controlling the controllables while preparing for the uncontrollables. Many people waste their energy lamenting external conditions. They panic at markets, gossip about politics, or collapse under the weight of unpredictability. But the Stoic strategist asks a different question. What is within my power? If I cannot control the weather, can I prepare my ship? If I cannot control a crisis, can I strengthen my foundation? If I cannot stop change, can I become more adaptive, more resilient, more valuable? They do not complain. They calibrate. This mindset leads to consistent strength, because while others are scattered and consumed by fear, the strategist becomes stable. While others fight shadows, the strategist sharpens his sword. This is not detachment. It is precision. It is the decision to master what can be mastered and to waste no breath on what cannot. Strategic thinkers also develop the ability to scan the horizon. Most people operate from the rearview mirror. They only notice change when it slaps them in the face. But the strategist watches the wind. They sense the subtle shifts before the storm. They ask, what is changing in behavior, in culture, in technology, in people? They are not prophets. They are readers of patterns. Innovators who succeed are not simply talented. They are early. They position themselves in silence so that when the wave comes, they are already riding it. They do not chase trends. They create the conditions that make them inevitable. This anticipation is not mystical. It is built through study, observation, and attention. While others are distracted by noise, the strategist sees the signal. They prepare when others sleep, and because of this, they do not panic. They lead. Finally, and perhaps most critically, strategic thinking demands ruthless prioritization. In a world flooded with options, distractions, and voices, clarity becomes a weapon. Most people say yes to too much. They dilute their energy across 100 pursuits and wonder why nothing moves forward. But the strategist understands that to build something meaningful, you must learn to say no, not out of arrogance, but out of discipline. The principle is simple. Every yes to something trivial is a no to something vital. You cannot build a legacy if your calendar belongs to everyone else. You cannot gain mastery if your mind is pulled in 1,000 directions. Strategic thinkers focus only on what matters. They apply the rule that 80% of results come from 20% of efforts, and they devote themselves to that 20% with relentless force. Imagine the writer who spends 5 hours a day answering emails and 15 minutes writing. He is busy, but not strategic. Now picture another who eliminates distractions, carves out 3 focused hours each morning, and ships a finished book in 6 months. The difference is not talent. It is clarity. Strategic thinking, then, is not a question of brilliance. It is a way of living. It is the habit of thinking in layers, balancing ambition with caution, planning for chaos, and moving with intention. It is not rigid. It evolves. It refines itself. It listens to reality. It adapts without losing the thread. It is philosophy in motion, vision under pressure, and discipline embodied. And it is available to anyone who chooses it. The masses will always move reactively. They will chase the new, complain about the unknown, and drown in distraction. But the strategist moves quietly through the noise. He sees the structure beneath the chaos. He positions, he prepares, he acts with calm purpose. In the next chapter, we will explore how critical thinking sharpens this discipline. We will break down the traps that cloud judgment, the logic that strengthens clarity, and the mental models that make strategy not only possible, but reliable. Because to think strategically is to think clearly, and clarity in the hands of the disciplined becomes power. So begin here. Learn to see beyond today. Learn to control what is yours. Learn to step back when others rush forward. Because in a world that reacts, those who think with depth will always lead. That is the path of the strategic mind. Chapter 3. Sharpen your mind with critical thinking. At the heart of every powerful strategist lies not just vision, not just planning, but a deeper and more essential weapon. That weapon is the mind trained in critical thinking. Without it, strategy becomes a gamble. A person may have ambition, experience, and even clarity of goals, but without the ability to think clearly, logically, and independently, they are vulnerable to illusion, emotion, and misjudgment. Critical thinking is what transforms ideas into direction. It is the blade that keeps strategy sharp. It is what protects action from falling into blind reaction. To think critically is to wage war against the invisible enemies of the mind. Assumptions, inherited beliefs, social conformity, and emotional reflexes are the silent forces that cloud our judgment and lead even the intelligent astray. Most people do not examine the ideas they live by. They accept traditions because they are old, opinions because they are popular, and systems because they are familiar. But the critical thinker does not accept without examination. He asks the question most people avoid. Is this actually true? What supports this belief? Does it still serve its purpose? The Stoics understood that the quality of our lives depends on the quality of our thoughts. And so the first act of wisdom is to examine those thoughts. A true strategist never assumes the default is correct. He challenges the surface. He inspects the foundation. He seeks not comfort in agreement, but strength in clarity. One of the most common traps the critical mind must overcome is confirmation bias. It is the tendency to seek out information that supports what we already believe, while ignoring or resisting anything that contradicts it. Most people do not search for truth. They search for validation. They surround themselves with echo chambers, listen to voices that flatter their views, and dismiss ideas that make them uncomfortable. But the strategist embraces discomfort. He reads opposing arguments. He invites contradiction. He challenges his own logic with the question, what if I am wrong? And more importantly, where might I be blind? This is not weakness. It is strength. To test your own ideas is to strengthen them. It is to prepare your thinking for the battles it must face in the real world. A business leader who believes a new strategy will succeed does not only collect evidence in favor, he searches for reasons it might fail. He plays devil's advocate against himself, ensuring his confidence is not built on a fragile illusion, but on tested, pressure-hardened clarity. Another essential discipline of critical thinking is understanding the difference between correlation and causation. Human minds are pattern-seeking machines. We see links where none exist. A company launches a product and revenue goes up, so we assume the product caused the increase. But what if the real reason was seasonal demand or a competitor's collapse? A person meditates before a meeting and has a good day, then credits meditation for the outcome, forgetting preparation or timing may have played a greater role. The critical thinker stops and asks, is this truly the cause? What other variables are at play? He digs deeper. He challenges the convenient narrative. He uses reason and evidence, not anecdote or superstition, to shape his view of reality. Equally dangerous is the trap of overgeneralization. Drawing vast conclusions from small data sets is one of the easiest ways to fall into strategic blindness. One failed startup does not mean all startups fail. One successful tactic does not mean it will work in every context. The world is more complex than any single example can capture. Strategic thinkers resist the urge to universalize too quickly. They hold conclusions loosely, test them constantly, and allow new data to refine what they believe. They understand that wisdom is not in having the right answer once, but in asking the right question again and again. To think critically is also to confront the hidden distortions of the mind, known as cognitive biases. These are shortcuts our brains use to make decisions faster, but at the cost of accuracy. The availability heuristic makes us fear rare but vivid dangers like plane crashes while ignoring more common threats like heart disease. The sunk cost fallacy makes us hold on to failing investments, relationships, or strategies just because we have already spent time, money, or emotion on them. The bandwagon effect leads us to follow the crowd, not because the crowd is right, but because it is easier to conform than to stand alone. A strategic thinker studies these biases not to blame others, but to correct himself. He knows that being smart is not the same as being right. It is only through discipline that the mind becomes trustworthy. Clarity of language is another mark of a disciplined mind. Many people use vague terms like success, innovation, or value without ever defining them. They speak in slogans and buzzwords, hiding confusion beneath the illusion of fluency. But the strategic thinker demands precision. He asks, "What do I really mean by this? Can I define it clearly? Can I measure it? If not, I do not yet understand it." Clarity in thought begins with clarity in speech, and clarity in speech begins with the courage to be exact. To support this discipline, critical thinkers rely on mental models. These are not formulas, but lenses, tools that simplify complex problems and offer structured ways of analyzing choices. One of the most powerful is first principles thinking. Instead of accepting things as they are, the thinker breaks a problem down to its most basic elements and builds back up from there. Elon Musk, when building rockets, did not accept the industry's price points. He asked, "What are the raw materials? What do they cost? And why can't this be done differently?" That is first principles. That is clarity. Another is inversion thinking. Instead of only asking what will make this succeed, the strategist asks what will guarantee failure, and then avoids those outcomes. This shift often reveals blind spots. The 80-20 principle reminds us that not all effort is equal, that a few actions drive most results, that the key is not doing more, but doing what matters. Occam's razor reminds us that the simplest explanation, when supported by evidence, is usually correct. And second-order thinking trains the strategist to look beyond the immediate result and assess the ripple effects across time. When these models are practiced regularly, they become habits of the mind. They create a structure of thought that is resilient under pressure and reliable in uncertainty. The strategist does not just think harder, he thinks better. His mind is not filled with noise, it is trained like a blade. He is not faster, he is more deliberate. Finally, and most importantly, critical thinking demands intellectual humility. Many people cling to their ideas not because they are true, but because they fear being wrong. They confuse change with weakness and revision with shame. But the Stoic strategist sees it differently. To admit a mistake is to demonstrate strength. To change your mind when new evidence emerges is not a defeat. It is an upgrade. The goal is not to protect pride. It is to protect clarity. It is to win not the argument, but the truth. This humility allows the thinker to continue evolving. It frees him from the prison of ego. He does not attach his identity to being right. He attaches it to being honest, to learning, to refining. And through this process, his thinking becomes not just sharp, but wise. Critical thinking is not the habit of doubting everything. It is the practice of questioning wisely. It is not negativity. It is precision. It is the refusal to accept confusion when clarity is possible. It is the mind that sees through fog, that moves through noise, that pierces illusion and arrives at truth with stillness and strength. And this mind, when fused with strategy, becomes unstoppable. In the next chapter, we will take these principles and put them into motion. We will explore how real-world decisions are made, how to break down complex trade-offs, and how to ensure that each choice is not only intelligent, but aligned with a greater vision. Because it is not enough to think well. You must act with that clarity. You must lead yourself, moment by moment, from intention to execution. That is how the strategist begins to master not just decisions, but life itself. Chapter 4. Make wiser decisions with strategy. The ability to make high-quality decisions, not once, but consistently, is among the most powerful skills a person can develop. Every domain of life, whether it is career, relationships, health, finances, or personal growth, is shaped not by fate, not by chance, but by the quality of the decisions we make. Yet most people treat decision-making as a spontaneous event, relying on instinct, emotion, or the opinions of others. They hope to stumble into wisdom, but a strategic thinker knows that decision-making is not a matter of luck. It is a disciplined process, one that demands clarity, structure, and inner calm. At the foundation of this discipline lies clarity of intention. Poor decisions often emerge from vague desires. People say they want happiness, success, freedom, but when asked to define those things, they fall into abstraction. Without precision, the mind cannot evaluate its options. The strategic mind always begins with the question, what exactly am I trying to achieve? What is the desired outcome? What does success look like in this context? When the goal is clear, the fog of decision evaporates. Distractions are filtered out. Options are measured not by how they feel, but by how they align with purpose. A man choosing between two job offers may be tempted to pick the higher salary, but a strategic thinker would ask deeper questions. Which path supports his long-term vision? Which role cultivates growth, builds rare skills, or opens meaningful relationships? A wise decision is not always the louder one. It is the one that builds the future you want without destroying the foundation you stand on. Once the objective is clear, the next principle is to gather the right information. This is where many people fail. Some leap into decisions with little research, driven by urgency. Others collect endless data but remain paralyzed, afraid to move. The strategic thinker finds the balance. He identifies what is essential, filters what is irrelevant, and resists the temptation to overload the mind with noise. He draws knowledge from multiple sources, not just those that affirm his beliefs. He seeks contradiction. He values challenge. He understands that real clarity comes not from confirmation, but from confrontation with uncertainty. Another key element is problem framing. The way a question is asked shapes the answers available. If a company asks, "How can we sell more?" it might miss the deeper question, "Why are people not buying?" If a person asks, "Which relationship is more exciting?" they might ignore the better question, "Which one is more sustainable?" The wise strategist reframes problems to reveal hidden truths. He looks beneath the surface question to uncover the real issue. And when the question is clear, the right answers often appear on their own. For more complex or emotionally charged decisions, structured tools become essential. One such tool is the decision matrix. Rather than being swayed by one dominant factor, this method allows you to break down your options into categories, assign importance to each, and weigh them objectively. A person considering a major relocation might list cost of living, career opportunity, family impact, lifestyle, and future potential, assigning each a weight based on personal priorities. When choices are laid out like this, emotion gives way to structure, and decisions become acts of reason rather than impulse. But even with structure, no decision is ever free from risk. Many people hesitate to act because they seek certainty where it does not exist. They believe a wise decision must be a perfect one. But the truth is, no great achievement was born from certainty. The strategic mind does not chase perfection. It calculates probability. It evaluates risk versus reward. It studies scenarios, considers best and worst outcomes, and chooses not what is safest, but what is most aligned with long-term value. The goal is not to avoid risk, but to understand it, prepare for it, and act with clarity in its presence. A powerful tool here is expected value analysis. If an entrepreneur is deciding whether to launch a product, they do not just ask if it might work. They ask, what are the possible outcomes? How likely is each to occur? And what value does each bring? By assigning weight to possibilities, the decision becomes grounded in rational expectation rather than emotional hope. Strategic decision-making also requires the discipline of thinking in consequences. Many people fall into the trap of short-term thinking. They make a move, get a quick benefit, and later face the hidden cost. A company that cuts staff to boost profits may celebrate now, only to face a culture collapse a year later. A person who takes a high-paying job with no personal growth may realize years later that they bought comfort at the cost of purpose. The wise thinker does not only ask what happens next, he asks what happens after that. He traces the ripple, he sees through time. Another essential principle is distinguishing between reversible and irreversible decisions. Not all choices deserve the same level of analysis. Some decisions, like trying a new diet, switching up a workflow, or launching a marketing test, are reversible. If it fails, you adapt. Others, like leaving a career, selling a business, or committing to a lifelong partner, are much harder to reverse. Strategic thinkers act quickly on reversible choices. They do not overthink what can be changed. But when the stakes are high and the path is permanent, they slow down, they consult widely, and they think deeply before they act. Equally important is emotional discipline. Many bad decisions are not the result of poor logic, but poor timing. A person makes a purchase in a moment of excitement, quits a job in a fit of anger, or lashes out in a conversation that required patience. The Stoics remind us that emotion is a poor master. Strategic thinkers practice the 24-hour rule. If a decision is emotionally charged, they wait. Let the storm pass. Let the fog lift. Then they act. They also use the pre-mortem technique. They imagine that a decision has already failed and then ask, what went wrong? This backward lens forces them to anticipate problems before they arise, transforming error into foresight. One of the most overlooked practices in decision-making is reflection. Most people move from one choice to another without learning. But the strategist audits the past. He reviews his major decisions, asks what worked, what did not, and why. Did he gather enough data? Did bias cloud his vision? Did he overestimate certainty? Did he confuse impulse with clarity? Over time, this habit becomes self-correction. It is how the mind sharpens itself. It is how wisdom compounds. Finally, there is the principle of opportunity cost. Every decision is not only a choice, but a trade-off. To say yes to one thing is to say no to another. The question is not only what you are gaining, but what you are giving up. The wise thinker asks, is this the best use of my time, energy, and resources? Is there another path that offers greater value? Strategic decision-makers do not settle for what is available. They choose what is essential, and they understand that time, once spent, does not return. To master the art of decision-making is not to eliminate risk or emotion, but to develop a clear, disciplined process that ensures your choices build the life you are aiming for. When your decisions are guided by clarity, structured by logic, and refined by reflection, you begin to move through life with power and poise. While others are trapped in hesitation or regret, you advance step by step with direction and strength. In the next chapter, we will explore the art of strategic execution, where great decisions become real-world success. Because insight is nothing without action, And no vision, however brilliant, matters unless it is brought to life through precision, adaptability, and relentless follow-through. Chapter 5. Strategic Execution: Turning Decisions into Reality. A brilliant idea means nothing without motion. A carefully crafted strategy, no matter how intelligent, becomes worthless if it dies in the space between intention and action. The world is full of ambitious minds and visionary plans that never saw the light of day. Not because the ideas were flawed, but because execution failed. This is the great divide. Knowing what to do is one thing. Doing it repeatedly and well is something else entirely. Strategic thinkers understand this truth at their core. They do not chase perfect plans. They master the art of making plans real. Execution is not about inspiration. It is about discipline. It is not the initial burst of motivation that counts, but the consistent application of deliberate action, even when energy fades and resistance rises. The Stoics teach us that what matters is not what we promise ourselves in moments of comfort, but what we hold to in moments of hardship. And nowhere is this more apparent than in the realm of execution. The first step toward effective execution is clarity of action. Many people fail not because they lack drive, but because they do not define their goals in actionable terms. They say they want to be healthier, more productive, or more successful, but they do not translate those desires into concrete steps. A strategic mind breaks down every goal into a series of clear, measurable actions. If the aim is to grow a business, the question becomes, through what channels, in what time frame, with which resources? Improve customer retention, launch a new marketing initiative, optimize pricing, and each of these is further divided into tasks with owners, deadlines, and performance indicators. Execution thrives on clarity. Without it, it becomes vague intention disguised as progress. Once clarity is established, prioritization becomes essential. One of the most common execution traps is trying to do too much at once. In their eagerness, people launch multiple initiatives and dilute their focus. But strategic thinkers understand that progress is not measured by how many things you start, but by how many you complete. They apply methods such as the prioritization matrix, sorting tasks into levels of importance and urgency, ensuring their energy is spent on actions that drive long-term value, not just short-term busyness. They resist the temptation to react. They choose what matters and let the noise wait. To further sharpen focus, strategic thinkers often structure their goals into 90-day cycles. A goal stretched over a year may seem distant and abstract, but when broken into focused 3-month windows, it becomes real, urgent, and achievable. Within each 90-day cycle, they identify 3 to 5 core objectives and commit to completing them with intensity and accountability. This time frame is long enough to produce transformation, yet short enough to maintain momentum. It becomes a rhythm of disciplined progress, avoiding the illusion of motion that comes from planning too far ahead without clear checkpoints. But even with clarity and structure, execution will always meet resistance, not from the outside world, but from within. Procrastination, fear of failure, self-doubt, and emotional fatigue are the silent assassins of execution. Strategic minds do not rely on motivation alone. They build systems that protect progress. They track their daily actions, hold themselves to weekly reviews, and use accountability partners, mentors, or digital tools to stay aligned. They know that willpower is finite, so they create environments where discipline becomes easier than distraction. Speed is another powerful element of execution. Many delay action in pursuit of perfection. They overthink, overdesign, and endlessly refine, believing that once the plan is flawless, success will follow. But strategic thinkers know that the battlefield of reality rarely matches the blueprint. They adopt the mindset of launch fast and adjust through feedback. They embrace the idea that progress is born not in preparation alone, but in motion. A product tested in the market teaches more than 1,000 brainstorms. A habit practiced daily beats a perfect plan never begun. Speed is not recklessness. It is the courage to begin and the humility to improve. Execution also demands mastery of resources. Time, money, energy, and human capital are finite. Many plans fail not because the idea lacked potential, but because resources were scattered too thin. The strategic mind audits its resources continuously. It asks where time is being wasted, where money is bleeding, where attention is fragmented. Then it redirects those resources toward the highest leverage actions. Using principles like the 80-20 rule, they identify the small percentage of efforts that yield the majority of results and double down on them. They do not try to do everything. They do what matters and do it well. Momentum is another force that must be deliberately managed. The hardest part of execution is not the middle, it is the beginning. Starting creates friction, but once motion begins, the weight of action becomes lighter. Strategic thinkers know this and design for early wins. They structure projects so that initial steps generate visible progress. These quick victories fuel confidence and reinforce the habit of execution. They also understand that consistency beats intensity. A short burst of effort followed by long stagnation achieves little. Daily, steady movement builds power. They design systems that reward rhythm over rush. No plan unfolds without setbacks. The path to execution is not straight. Obstacles will rise, timelines will stretch, results will fluctuate. Many give up here, mistaking difficulty for defeat. But the strategic mind sees setbacks as information, not failure. They practice adaptive execution. They observe, adjust, and refine without abandoning the goal. If one path fails, they find another. If conditions change, they adapt their approach. What remains fixed is the destination. What changes is the route. Flexibility without compromise is the key to survival in dynamic environments. Delegation is another essential skill in execution. The myth of the lone achiever is seductive but destructive. No great result is built alone. Strategic thinkers recognize their limits. They ask, what must I do myself and what can be delegated? They focus their energy on high-value tasks, the decisions that only they can make, and empower others to handle the rest. Whether through building a team, outsourcing, or automating routine processes, they leverage the strength of others to multiply their own effectiveness. This is not laziness, it is clarity of role. It is leadership in action. Measurement completes the execution cycle. To act without tracking is to walk blind. Strategic thinkers set clear metrics, review them regularly, and adjust based on real data. If progress stalls, they do not make excuses. They diagnose. If an initiative fails, they study the failure without defensiveness. This feedback loop of action, measurement, and refinement transforms execution from a guessing game into a process of continuous improvement. It ensures that effort is not just persistent, but intelligent. To master execution is to bridge the gap between idea and result. It is what separates those who live in potential from those who live in progress. It demands discipline, focus, adaptability, and relentless follow-through. It is not a single skill, but a collection of habits, mindsets, and structures that together build momentum toward meaningful achievement. In the next chapter, we will explore the power of strategic adaptability, because even the best executed plan must evolve. Conditions change, environments shift, and those who survive are not the strongest, but the most responsive. The strategist who learns to adapt while staying rooted in vision gains a power that cannot be shaken. Chapter 6. Adapt strategically, thrive continuously. The world does not wait. It moves, it shifts, it transforms. Markets rise and fall, technologies evolve, competitors emerge, and entire industries can vanish in a blink. What was considered best practice yesterday can become obsolete today. In such a world, adaptability is no longer a luxury. It is a necessity. And not just any kind of adaptability, but one that is rooted in strategic awareness. To endure is not enough. The true strategist learns to thrive by transforming uncertainty into opportunity and by remaining anchored in vision while flowing with change. Strategic adaptability is not the absence of direction. It is not mindless flexibility or abandoning principles when pressure builds. It is the disciplined art of reassessing, adjusting, and re-engaging with precision. The Stoics taught that we cannot control external events, but we can control our response. Strategic adaptability is the mature expression of that wisdom. It is the ability to pivot without panic, to shift without surrender, and to evolve without losing integrity. At the heart of adaptability lies situational awareness. Many failures do not occur because people lack intelligence or effort, but because they fail to perceive change in time. They operate as if the world will stand still to accommodate their plans. But the strategist remains alert. He scans the horizon. He observes trends, listens to shifts in customer behavior, tracks technological evolution, and reads the subtle signs of disruption. He does not wait for the storm. He prepares while the sky is still calm. One of the most powerful tools for cultivating this awareness is scenario planning. The strategist never assumes the future will unfold in a straight line. Instead, he constructs multiple possible futures. What if the market collapses? What if regulations change? What if a new competitor redefines the landscape? These questions are not exercises in pessimism, they are acts of preparation. By imagining these possibilities and designing responses in advance, the strategist builds resilience. He is not surprised when change comes, he is positioned. But preparation is not enough if one clings too tightly to old assumptions. Adaptability demands intellectual humility. Many leaders, organizations, and individuals fall into the trap of the sunk cost fallacy. They continue investing in a failing path because they have already given it so much. But a wise mind knows that pride is a poor strategist. The true test of strength is not how long you hold on, but how clearly you can recognize when it is time to let go. Strategic thinkers remain fully committed to their destination, but they are flexible in their method. They are loyal to the mission, not to the map. A key expression of adaptability is rapid learning. In fast-moving environments, the ability to absorb information, extract insight, and act on it quickly becomes a decisive advantage. Strategic minds embrace an experimental mindset. They test new approaches on a small scale, observe the results, and refine before expanding. Rather than overcommitting to untested ideas, they implement minimum viable changes that provide real-world feedback. This creates a loop of constant improvement, where each step strengthens the next. The strategist is not stuck in theory. He learns by doing and grows by refining. Change, however, is never purely intellectual. It often brings emotional turbulence. Many people resist change, not because they lack intelligence, but because they fear the loss it brings. Loss of control, familiarity, status, or identity. The strategic thinker cultivates emotional resilience. He trains himself to face change without flinching. He does not see disruption as a threat. He sees it as a challenge that invites growth. He reframes discomfort as part of the path. The Stoics did not promise comfort. They promised strength. And in the face of uncertainty, strength becomes peace. Adaptability also requires the expansion of perspective. One of the deadliest traps in a changing world is isolation. When individuals or organizations surround themselves only with like-minded voices, they create echo chambers. These closed loops reinforce outdated thinking and block new insight. The strategic mind seeks diversity. He engages with those who disagree. He studies other industries, cultures, and systems. Innovation often comes not from thinking harder within your own domain, but from integrating ideas across disciplines. It is the collision of perspectives that sparks evolution. Another essential element of adaptability is the continuous reassessment of resource allocation. As conditions shift, so too must the way we use our time, energy, and capital. Strategic thinkers constantly ask whether their current investments still make sense. Is this still the best use of our time? Should we redirect funding to more promising initiatives? What should be trimmed or cut entirely? They resist the inertia of tradition. Just because something has always been done a certain way does not mean it must continue. The strategist is fluid. He does not waste strength on legacy. He channels it into leverage. A vital mindset that drives adaptability is opportunistic thinking. While others see chaos, the strategist asks, what can be gained here? Where others see collapse, he searches for openings. When disruption strikes, he does not retreat. He repositions. He asks what value can now be created that was previously impossible. This mindset allows him to move forward while others freeze. Many of history's greatest innovations were born not in moments of peace, but in periods of disorder. The adaptable mind turns breakdown into breakthrough. A powerful tool that embodies this mindset is the pivot principle. Strategic thinkers understand that when conditions shift, the response should not be to abandon everything, but to pivot. A pivot is not a surrender. It is a shift in execution while remaining loyal to the core purpose. Many of the most successful companies and individuals in history did not start where they ended. They adjusted their trajectory when it became clear the original path was no longer viable. They retained their vision but changed the vehicle. This is not weakness. It is wisdom. Adaptability also means preparing for non-linear change. Most people expect progress to unfold gradually, but reality often moves in sudden leaps. Industries are reshaped overnight. Technologies reach tipping points and redefine expectations instantly. The strategic mind builds flexibility into its foundation. It does not bet on stability. It anticipates shock. It maintains margin, optionality, and the mental readiness to shift when others are still processing what has happened. This preparedness is not paranoia. It is foresight in action. Lastly, the strategist turns every adaptation into a lesson. He does not move from one crisis to another without reflection. He studies what worked and what failed. He asks which signals were missed and how they can be recognized next time. He builds systems that institutionalize this learning, transforming each adaptation into a step toward greater agility. In doing so, change does not merely challenge him, it strengthens him. To master strategic adaptability is to develop more than a skill. It is to cultivate a way of being, a way of seeing the world not as a series of threats to endure, but as a stream of opportunities to shape. It is the decision to remain grounded in vision while dancing with reality. It is the ability to shift without breaking, to respond without hesitation, and to lead without fear. In the next chapter, we will explore another critical element of strategic mastery, one that turns internal clarity into external influence. Because even the most intelligent decision or adaptation means little unless others are moved to act with you. Strategic influence is the key to rallying allies, building momentum, and transforming thought into collective power. Chapter 7. Influence with integrity and strategy. In the realm of strategy, no decision, no plan, and no vision can thrive in isolation. No matter how intelligent your thinking is, your success will ultimately depend on your ability to move others. In business, in politics, in relationships, and even in quiet personal matters, influence is the force that transforms thought into action. It is the bridge between intention and impact, and those who master it become more than thinkers. They become leaders. But strategic influence is not about manipulation. It is not about controlling others or forcing decisions. It is about understanding how people think, what they value, and how they respond to the world around them. It is about building trust, aligning interests, and guiding others with clarity and empathy. At its highest form, influence is not coercion. It is connection. It is leadership without shouting, movement without pressure. One of the most essential pillars of influence is credibility. People do not follow words, they follow character. They follow those who have shown through consistent action that they are worthy of trust. Credibility is not declared. It is earned over time. It is built through keeping promises, delivering results, and maintaining integrity even when it is difficult. Strategic thinkers know that a single act of hypocrisy can damage years of effort. That is why they protect their reputation with vigilance. They do not pretend to know everything, but what they say, they stand behind. What they commit to, they follow through. Their words carry weight, not because they are loud, but because they are reliable. Beyond credibility lies emotional intelligence. To influence others, you must first understand them. Strategic influence is never built on logic alone. People are moved by feelings, by tone, by the energy behind the message. A wise strategist listens deeply. He observes more than he speaks. He reads the room. He adjusts his approach not to manipulate, but to connect. He knows that what people remember is not just what was said, but how they felt when it was said. Influence begins with empathy. It grows with emotional alignment. A powerful technique within strategic influence is framing. The way a message is presented often matters more than the message itself. A price increase can be framed as an investment in quality. A policy change can be framed as an opportunity for innovation. Strategic thinkers do not distort the truth. They illuminate the right angle. They help others see possibility where they once saw threat. They control perception, not with deception, but with clarity. Because the truth, when properly framed, is often more persuasive than any illusion. Another timeless principle of influence is reciprocity. When you offer genuine value without immediate expectation, you create bonds of trust. When you help others succeed, they become more open to your guidance. Strategic thinkers understand that generosity is not weakness, it is a powerful foundation. Whether through mentoring, support, or simply showing up when it matters, they build credibility not only with skill, but with presence. And when it comes time to lead or ask for support, they do so on the back of real relationships, not empty demands. Influence also demands an understanding of timing. You cannot force people to move before they are ready. Some try to persuade with pressure, pushing ideas too soon and too aggressively. But a strategist knows that influence is often a process. It begins with planting seeds. It continues with space, patience, and presence. Sometimes the most persuasive move is silence, letting the idea take root, allowing others to arrive at the conclusion themselves. The Stoics taught that influence is not found in force, but in calm alignment with nature, and nature moves in cycles, not shocks. Another subtle yet powerful force is social proof. People are far more likely to accept an idea if they see that others have already done so, especially those they admire. Strategic thinkers use this insight with precision. They build early alliances. They seek endorsements from respected voices. They create case studies, stories of success, and visible examples that shift the perception of what is possible. Once one key person is convinced, the rest often follow, not because they were forced, but because the momentum of belief became stronger than resistance. Adaptability is also vital in influence. One message does not fit all. Some people are moved by logic, others by emotion. Some need data, others need vision. Some respond to facts, others to feeling. The strategic mind studies the person, not just the argument. They adjust their delivery, their language, and their pacing to match the person they are speaking to. They do not change the message itself. They change the path by which it is received. Influence, like water, adapts to the shape of the vessel without losing its strength. Priming is another powerful tool. The context that comes before the message can shape how the message is received. Strategic thinkers guide attention. If they want someone to be receptive to a bold idea, they first introduce a smaller, related truth. If they want to invite action, they begin by asking questions that lead the mind toward acceptance. This is not manipulation. It is preparation. The mind that is warmed up is more likely to engage. The person who feels understood is more likely to agree. And when objections arise, as they always will, the strategic influencer does not attack. He listens. He validates concerns. He reframes. Rather than proving the other person wrong, he offers a new way of seeing. A person who feels heard is more willing to shift. A person who feels respected is more open to change. Influence is not about crushing resistance. It is about guiding perspective. Persistence also plays its part. Not the kind that nags or pressures, but the kind that endures. Many give up too soon. Others push too hard. The strategist balances both. He repeats ideas subtly. He reinforces them through stories, symbols, and reminders. He gives time. He waits. He knows that truth often needs repetition to be seen, that the right message, heard at the right moment, can finally take root. And perhaps most importantly, the strategist leads with vision. He does not merely persuade people to agree with a point. He invites them into a future, a world that is better, clearer, more purposeful. He uses stories to make that world vivid. He paints possibility. He gives people something to believe in, something to build with him, and in doing so, he turns influence from an act of persuasion into a movement of purpose. All of this, however, depends on one final truth. Influence is not built in a day. It is not a single speech or a clever tactic. It is a reputation earned over time. Every word you speak, every action you take, every promise you keep or break contributes to how others see you. The strategic thinker protects that perception, not to impress, but to remain aligned. His words match his actions. His message matches his presence. And in doing so, his influence becomes not just effective, but enduring. To master strategic influence is to master the ability to lead without domination, to persuade without pressure, and to move people not with tricks, but with truth. It is the ability to guide others toward better decisions, to align individual will with collective strength, and to create movements rooted in clarity, trust, and vision. In the next chapter, we will explore strategic resilience. Because no matter how well you plan or how masterfully you persuade, life will test your endurance. Setbacks will come. Challenges will rise, and only those who have cultivated true inner resilience will be able to sustain success when the path becomes steep. Chapter 8: Strategic Resilience, Turning Setbacks into Strength. In the pursuit of any worthy objective, setbacks are not the exception. They are the rule. Plans unravel, markets shift, unexpected events force recalibration. What separates those who endure from those who collapse is not the absence of adversity, but the presence of resilience. And not just survival, but strategic resilience. The kind of resilience that does not merely allow one to withstand pressure, but to grow stronger through it. This is not about gritting your teeth and waiting for the storm to pass. This is about learning to walk through it with your eyes open and your purpose intact. Strategic resilience begins with a mental posture. The willingness to interpret difficulty not as a personal failure, but as a necessary part of the process. When most people encounter a setback, they internalize it. They let it define their self-worth. But the Stoic thinker takes a different path. He steps back, he observes, he asks not, "Why did this happen to me?" but "What does this situation demand of me? What can I learn from it? What skill must I develop now?" In this shift lies the power to transform failure from a force that crushes into one that clarifies. Instead of dwelling in disappointment, he rises through reflection. Central to this ability is emotional regulation. When we are hit with setbacks, our first reaction is rarely rational. It is frustration, anger, fear, or paralysis. But the resilient mind is trained to pause, to breathe, to create space between impulse and action. Strategic individuals do not pretend they are unaffected. They simply choose not to be ruled by emotion. They use tools like reframing, journaling, and mindfulness not to escape pain, but to stay grounded within it. This emotional composure allows for clearer decisions, even under extreme pressure. When others spiral, the resilient thinker remains still enough to respond wisely. Yet resilience is not only reactive, it is proactive. Many failures stem not from weakness, but from lack of preparation. The strategist anticipates potential problems and prepares in advance. He does not assume the path will be smooth. He builds margin, he plans contingencies. He studies what could go wrong, not to live in fear, but to act with foresight. Like a general preparing for multiple battle scenarios, he constructs mental and tactical buffers that allow him to pivot without panic. When the unexpected arrives, it is not a shock. It is a moment already accounted for. One of the most powerful expressions of resilience is adaptive persistence. This is the discipline of remaining committed to the goal while staying flexible in the method. Many people conflate stubbornness with strength. They refuse to change course even when the evidence clearly demands it. But true resilience does not mean doing the same thing over and over. It means refusing to abandon the mission while constantly refining the strategy. If a bridge is destroyed, the resilient mind does not retreat. It finds a new way to cross the river. This kind of persistence ensures that forward movement never becomes stagnation disguised as commitment. Resourcefulness is also a cornerstone of resilience, the ability to make the most of what is available, especially when conditions are far from ideal. Those who are fragile tend to fixate on what they lack. They wait for better tools, better timing, better support. But the strategic thinker asks, what do I already have? What skills, relationships, or assets can I mobilize right now? He does not sit in despair. He creates motion with whatever is within reach. He turns limitation into leverage, not through fantasy, but through discipline and creativity. And when things go wrong, as they inevitably do, the resilient mind reframes failure. Instead of treating a mistake as proof of inadequacy, he treats it as information. He extracts insight from what did not work, using it to strengthen the next iteration. He does not say, "I failed." He says, "I learned." He does not collapse under the weight of imperfection. He understands that mastery is not a straight line, but a spiral of refinement. Each misstep becomes a step toward greater understanding. In this mindset, failure loses its sting. It becomes part of the path. This strength, however, requires a foundation of self-belief. In the face of repeated challenges, many begin to question their ability, their worth, their vision. But the strategic mind is anchored not in blind confidence, but in earned self-trust. He remembers past triumphs, however small. He tracks his progress. He recognizes the skills he has developed, the wisdom he has earned, and the strength he has cultivated. This internal validation is what shields him from the need for external approval. He does not crumble when others doubt him, because he does not depend on their permission to continue. Closely tied to this is strategic patience. Many people fall apart because they expect immediate results. When the reward does not arrive quickly, they grow discouraged and give up. But the Stoic strategist knows that true progress is built over time. He embraces the long game. He commits to the process without demanding instant validation. He understands that slow growth is still growth, that discipline accumulates, that persistence compounds. And in doing so, he outlasts those who rush and burn out. His patience is not passive, it is powerful. It is a decision to stay the course, even when results are invisible. Support is another crucial, often neglected pillar of resilience. Many believe that strength means going alone, but the strategic mind knows that resilience is not about isolation. It is about alignment. He builds a network of mentors, peers, and allies who challenge and support him. He listens to the wisdom of those who have walked difficult paths. He seeks feedback, not to please others, but to see more clearly. He does not carry every burden alone. He delegates, he discusses, he leans when needed. Resilience is not the absence of need. It is the courage to seek strength beyond the self when the situation calls for it. One of the most effective tactics for staying resilient is creating small wins. When the mountain feels too steep, progress can feel impossible. The resilient strategist breaks the climb into smaller sections. He sets milestones that can be achieved quickly. Each small success becomes proof that movement is possible. Each achievement builds confidence, momentum, and clarity. These wins act like kindling for the internal fire. They prevent despair and restore a sense of progress. They remind the mind that even in difficult conditions, something can always be done, and doing something is always better than doing nothing. But perhaps the deepest foundation of strategic resilience is the acceptance of uncertainty. Most people suffer not because of difficulty, but because they resist the reality that life is unpredictable. They want control over every outcome, every step, every response. But the Stoic thinker surrenders this illusion. He understands that he cannot control the wind, only his sail. He does not waste energy demanding certainty. He uses that energy to prepare, to adapt, to adjust. This acceptance creates freedom. It allows him to face the unknown not with dread, but with curiosity. Not with anxiety, but with poise. To cultivate strategic resilience is to train the mind to remain upright when others fall. It is to embrace discomfort as part of the journey. It is to face difficulty not with complaint, but with composure. It is to continue acting with clarity, even when the path ahead is unclear. This kind of resilience does not remove pain, but it transforms it into purpose. It does not eliminate setbacks, but it ensures they do not become defeats. In the next chapter, we will return to the bridge between vision and reality, because no matter how resilient your mindset, true strength lies in what you do next. Strategic execution is where theory becomes action, and action becomes outcome. And in the end, resilience is only as powerful as the direction it sustains. Without execution, even the strongest mind drifts. But when resilience fuels action, the strategist becomes unstoppable. Chapter 9. Execute with precision and purpose. A brilliant idea is not enough. A well-written strategy, no matter how intelligent, will remain a lifeless document if it is not executed with force, clarity, and consistency. The real measure of a strategist is not how well he plans in theory, but how decisively he moves in practice. The world does not reward thought alone, it rewards transformation, and transformation only happens when vision becomes motion. Strategic execution is the bridge between intention and impact. It is the process that turns goals into action, direction into momentum, and dreams into results. Many speak of success, but few commit to the grind that brings success into form. The difference between those who imagine achievement and those who live it is not brilliance. It is execution. At the heart of execution is clarity. Many fail not because they lack talent, but because they lack precision. Their goals are vague, their priorities scattered, and their efforts diluted. Strategic thinkers begin by defining what must be achieved in unmistakable terms. They do not settle for general aspirations like growing a business or improving productivity. They translate vision into concrete outcomes. Increase quarterly revenue by 15%. Launch 3 marketing campaigns targeting specific demographics. Improve customer retention by 10% through redesigned onboarding. This level of specificity removes confusion and transforms abstract desires into operational directives. Once objectives are clear, the next discipline is prioritization. Not every task matters equally. The strategic mind applies the principle that a small number of efforts drive the majority of results. They ask, what are the essential few actions that, if executed consistently, will move the needle most significantly? Then they act accordingly. They eliminate distractions, delegate or delay what is secondary, and focus their energy on the highest leverage activities. They do not chase 10 priorities. They master one, then move to the next. The power of focus is the power of completion, yet even the best plans encounter resistance. People hesitate, systems slow, teams falter. The strategist anticipates this. He does not assume execution will flow without friction. He prepares for inertia and meets it head-on. When others complain about change, he communicates purpose. When bureaucracy obstructs, he simplifies pathways. When buy-in is lacking, he listens, explains, and aligns. He understands that execution is not just about doing, it is about creating a culture where doing becomes the norm, not the exception. Momentum is the lifeblood of execution. Starting is important, but sustaining is vital. Most begin with energy, but fade when early results do not arrive. The strategic executor builds systems to maintain movement, daily habits, weekly checkpoints, monthly reviews. They do not wait for inspiration, they act from discipline. They track progress, adjust when necessary, and celebrate incremental wins to reinforce belief. This is how they stay in motion when others stall. They do not ask, how do I stay motivated? They ask, what structure will ensure I act regardless of how I feel? Accountability is the spine of execution. Without it, even the best strategy becomes a loose intention. Strategic thinkers assign clear ownership to every objective. Each task has a name beside it, not a committee. They implement performance dashboards, hold regular check-ins, and create feedback loops that make progress visible. They know that what gets measured gets managed, and what gets ignored decays. They do not allow ambiguity to hide failure. They bring it to light, address it, and move forward. In their world, action is tracked, responsibility is real, and results are non-negotiable. But clarity and structure are not enough without adaptability. No execution path remains untouched by the unexpected. Conditions shift, new information emerges. What worked last month may no longer apply. The strategist operates with disciplined flexibility. He remains loyal to the destination, but fluid in his method. He reviews what is working, discards what is not, and is never too proud to pivot. He sees change not as an inconvenience, but as a signal, the signal that new data has arrived and that wisdom requires response. Leverage is a master key in execution. The strategist understands that not everything must be done by him, nor must it be done from scratch. He looks for ways to multiply effort. He automates routine tasks. He builds partnerships. He delegates to capable hands. He uses tools that accelerate speed. He asks, "What can I do that produces exponential returns? What actions, if taken today, will reduce friction for weeks to come?" His mind is wired not for volume, but for velocity, not for busyness, but for scale. Removing bottlenecks is another critical discipline. Often, execution is slowed not by complexity, but by one or two specific blockages. A broken system, a misaligned team member, an inefficient tool. The strategist conducts regular bottleneck analysis. He asks, what is the single biggest constraint slowing progress? And then he acts to remove it. This might mean a difficult conversation, a structural change, a reallocation of resources, but he does not tolerate friction becoming habit. He addresses it before it becomes invisible. The strategist also maintains a strong bias for action. Many stall because they wait for perfect conditions. They analyze endlessly, trying to eliminate every uncertainty before moving. But perfect conditions rarely arrive. The strategic executor believes that imperfect action is always better than perfect delay. He begins, tests, learns, and adjusts. He does not confuse preparation with progress. He moves because movement brings clarity, and clarity creates momentum. Setbacks are not a sign to stop. They are part of the process. Execution is not a straight road. It is filled with obstacles, reversals, and surprises. The strategist builds mental toughness. He expects friction and prepares for it emotionally. When failure hits, he pauses, reflects, and recalibrates. He does not spiral into despair. He studies what failed, extracts insight, and resumes. He knows that resilience is not about avoiding hardship. It is about continuing in the presence of it. It is not whether you're knocked down, but whether you rise quickly and learn something new when you do. Sustaining energy over the long term is also essential. Execution is a marathon. Strategic thinkers understand that progress must be sustained, not sprinted. They pace themselves. They create rituals that balance intensity with recovery. They take breaks without guilt because they are structured into the system. They celebrate wins to keep morale high. They revisit their vision often to remind themselves why the effort matters. This sustainability is what separates those who start strong and fade from those who endure and deliver. Ultimately, strategic execution is not just a skill, it is a lifestyle, a commitment to moving forward with intention, a refusal to let theory remain idle. It is what transforms potential into performance, preparation into achievement, and thought into legacy. You do not get remembered for what you planned. You get remembered for what you did, and what you did consistently. To master execution is to master life's most powerful lever. Because in a world filled with ideas, the rarest and most valuable act is the one who executes, the one who brings the unseen into form, who turns insight into systems, vision into results, and effort into enduring achievement. In the next chapter, we will explore strategic negotiation, how to shape outcomes, influence decisions, and navigate high-stakes discussions with clarity, confidence, and control. Because once execution is mastered, the next frontier is securing not just action, but advantage. Chapter 10. Strategic negotiation, mastering the art of influence and persuasion. Negotiation is not a domain reserved for high-stakes executives, seasoned diplomats, or those who live in boardrooms and backrooms. It is a part of life. You negotiate more often than you realize. Every time you request a raise, propose a new collaboration, set boundaries in a relationship, or even navigate the unspoken dynamics of influence and respect, you are negotiating. Sometimes the currency is financial. Other times it is emotional, reputational, or psychological, but the stakes are always real, and the outcomes always matter. Yet despite its centrality, many approach negotiation with hesitation or fear. Some see it as a contest of dominance, a battle where one must win and the other must lose. Others avoid it entirely, convinced that asking for more is too risky, too aggressive, or too uncomfortable. But the Stoic strategist sees negotiation for what it truly is. Not manipulation, not confrontation, but a conversation, a disciplined dialogue designed to align interests, uncover shared value, and shape outcomes that serve both sides while securing your own. At its essence, negotiation is about leverage, not the kind that bullies, but the kind that frames perception. Strategic negotiators understand that what matters most is not what you want, but how you present what you offer. They know that the art of persuasion begins with preparation, and so before entering any discussion, they invest deeply in clarity. What do I want? Why does it matter? What does the other party value? What pressures are they facing? What alternatives do I have if the deal falls through? These questions form the foundation of a resilient negotiating position. They turn uncertainty into readiness. They replace fear with confidence. One of the most overlooked but critical elements of strategic negotiation is the concept of BATNA, the best alternative to a negotiated agreement. The strategist never enters a discussion without knowing what they will do if talks break down. This knowledge is not just a safety net. It is a source of strength, because when you are clear on your alternatives, you are not desperate. You are grounded. You negotiate not from need, but from choice. And that choice gives you power. But power means little if not controlled. Many negotiations fail not due to logic, but due to ego. Anger, impatience, insecurity, and the hunger to win often derail what could have been a favorable outcome. Strategic negotiators cultivate emotional composure. They regulate their reactions. They listen without defensiveness. They do not allow a raised voice or a provocative offer to pull them off course. They remain calm not because they feel nothing, but because they have learned to master their internal state. In doing so, they become immovable. And in negotiation, the calmest person in the room often holds the most power. Silence is one of their most effective tools. Inexperienced negotiators rush to fill empty space with words, concessions, or over-explanations. But the strategist knows that silence creates pressure. It invites the other party to reveal more, to reconsider, to question their assumptions. Strategic silence is not passive. It is a calculated move, a space where influence breathes and the other side often moves first. Another vital technique is framing. Strategic thinkers understand that the way an offer is presented often determines how it is perceived. The same request can appear unreasonable or entirely fair, depending on context. Asking for a $10,000 raise may seem excessive to some, but framing it as an alignment with industry benchmarks based on proven results and documented value shifts the conversation. Suddenly, it is not a demand. It is a reasonable step based on data and contribution. Framing is not deception. It is direction. It is the ability to guide attention to what matters most and present reality in its most persuasive form. Skilled negotiators also think long-term. Many people fixate on immediate wins, but the strategist asks deeper questions. How does this deal affect my future positioning? What are the intangible costs and benefits? Will this agreement open or close doors later? They see every negotiation as part of a larger arc. Not just a transaction, but a step within a broader strategy. They are willing to trade short-term gains for long-term advantage. They consider the ripple effects, the unspoken dynamics, and the reputational impact. They understand that the real win is not just getting what you want today, but setting the stage for what you will achieve tomorrow. Controlling the pace of negotiation is another essential element. Many people rush to close. They fear losing the deal, so they accelerate the process. But strategic thinkers slow things down when necessary. They create space for deeper evaluation. They resist urgency when it is being used as a weapon. They set the tempo, not as a stalling tactic, but as a power move. When you control the pace, you control the pressure. And when you control the pressure, you shape better outcomes. Anchoring is another powerful strategy. The first offer often creates a reference point around which all subsequent discussion revolves. The strategic negotiator knows this and uses it with precision. He opens high, not out of arrogance, but to set a psychological baseline. He also remains alert when the other party tries to anchor first. If they do, he calmly reframes. He resets expectations with logic, data, or context. He does not get trapped in someone else's framing. He creates his own. But perhaps the most underestimated component of negotiation is relationship management. Many treat negotiation as a one-time exchange. The strategist sees it as a long game. Every negotiation sets the tone for future interactions. Every conversation either builds trust or erodes it. Even in tough discussions, the strategist maintains respect. He preserves goodwill. He leaves the door open, not because he is soft, but because he is smart. Because the people you negotiate with today may become allies or gatekeepers tomorrow. And the reputation you leave behind will often precede you before you speak again. Walking away is also part of the discipline. Many fear losing a deal and therefore compromise too early or too deeply, but the strategic negotiator knows when to say no. He recognizes when a deal no longer serves his interests. He has the strength to exit, not out of pride, but out of clarity. And paradoxically, that willingness to walk away often brings the other party back to the table with better terms. The ability to walk is the ultimate leverage, and those who possess it rarely have to use it. In the end, strategic negotiation is not about overpowering, it is about aligning. It is not about manipulation, it is about meaning. It is not about getting the most at any cost. It is about securing outcomes that elevate your position without compromising your values. The Stoic strategist does not negotiate for vanity. He negotiates to create clarity, value, and movement toward a greater vision. Mastering negotiation requires preparation, emotional control, strategic silence, thoughtful framing, patience, anchoring, long-term thinking, and the courage to say no when needed. It requires you to understand people as much as you understand numbers. It asks you to lead without demanding, to persuade without pushing, and to create influence through calm strength rather than loud assertion. In the next chapter, we will explore the heart of all great strategy, decision-making, because even the best negotiations, the strongest plans, and the clearest intentions will collapse if the decisions that follow are made in fear, haste, or confusion. Strategic decision-making is the art of choosing with clarity, acting with wisdom, and building a path where hesitation once stood. Chapter 11. Decide with clarity and calm. Every victory, every failure, every turning point in life or leadership begins with a decision. Some decisions open doors to growth, clarity, and opportunity. Others lead to stagnation, regret, or unintended consequences. But in all cases, the quality of your decisions determines the quality of your outcomes. This is not just a principle of strategy, it is a law of life. And those who master decision-making do not merely respond to the world, they shape it. Decision-making is where strategy becomes personal. It is where abstract thinking meets real-world consequence. Yet for many, it remains a source of paralysis. Some hesitate endlessly, overwhelmed by too many variables. Others decide too quickly, driven by emotion rather than reflection. The Stoic strategist rises above both extremes. He neither rushes nor retreats. He chooses with clarity, moves with confidence, and reflects with discipline. The first truth to grasp is that indecision is itself a decision, and often it is the most costly one. Many people convince themselves that delaying a choice reduces risk, but in truth, it only allows the world to decide for them. Opportunities vanish, problems escalate, momentum is lost. The strategist does not wait for perfect information. He understands that certainty is rare and that progress favors those who act with partial clarity rather than wait for impossible perfection. He manages risk not by avoiding it, but by facing it with preparation and resolve. Every sound decision begins with clarity of objective. The mind cannot aim if it does not know what it seeks. Many poor choices arise not from lack of intelligence, but from lack of direction. People get lost in noise because they have not defined what matters. The strategist filters every decision through a singular question. Does this move bring me closer to my long-term vision or pull me away from it? He eliminates distractions and resists temptations that promise short-term pleasure at the cost of long-term purpose. This alignment with core priorities becomes his compass when options multiply and pressures mount. Equally important is the principle of opportunity cost. Every decision is a trade. When you say yes to one path, you say no to others. Strategic thinkers do not ask only what they gain, they ask what they sacrifice. If I invest time here, what am I taking it away from? Is this truly the highest use of my energy? They think not in terms of preference, but in terms of return. They measure options not only by what they offer, but by what they cost in lost potential elsewhere. In doing so, they protect their time, their attention, and their mission from being diluted. One of the greatest threats to sound decision-making is emotional noise. Excitement can blind, fear can shrink vision, impatience can create recklessness. Strategic thinkers train themselves to observe their emotions without being ruled by them. They do not eliminate feeling, they integrate it, using it as data, not directive. They pause before acting, they analyze before committing. They ask, is this urgency internal or external? Is this fear rational or reactionary? Their decisions emerge not from impulse, but from the stillness that follows reflection. Yet, objectivity alone is not enough. The strategist also guards against cognitive distortion. Confirmation bias, the tendency to seek out evidence that supports what we already believe, is one of the most dangerous traps in high-stakes decisions. Strategic minds deliberately expose themselves to opposing views. They welcome disagreement. They play devil's advocate against their own assumptions. They ask, what am I missing? Where might I be wrong? This intellectual humility strengthens their reasoning. They understand that the goal is not to be right immediately, but to arrive at clarity through the rigor of thought. To aid this rigor, strategic decision-makers use mental models. These are frameworks that bring structure to complexity. First principles, thinking asks you to strip away assumptions and rebuild your logic from foundational truths. Second-order thinking pushes you to look beyond immediate outcomes and consider the ripple effects across time. Inversion flips the problem and asks what would guarantee failure, so those paths can be avoided. The 80-20 principle identifies which few actions will drive the majority of results, allowing you to focus effort where it matters most. The regret minimization framework asks, will I regret this in 10 years? These models do not replace judgment, they refine it. But even with clarity, tools, and logic, another challenge remains: the trap of overthinking, analysis paralysis. The mistaken belief that more information always leads to better decisions. But beyond a certain point, too much data creates confusion, not clarity. The strategist knows when to stop gathering and start choosing. He sets time limits. He distinguishes between what is relevant and what is noise. He embraces the truth that action taken with 80% clarity is more valuable than inaction in pursuit of 100% certainty. He trusts his preparation and moves forward. Learning from past decisions is another pillar of mastery. The strategist conducts post-decision reviews. He studies both success and failure, not to assign blame or bask in achievement, but to extract insight. What worked? What did not? What patterns are emerging? What habits need to change? Over time, this feedback loop refines his instincts. It sharpens his pattern recognition. It teaches him not only how to choose, but how to choose better with each iteration. Decision-making becomes not a moment, but a skill that compounds over time. A hidden force in decision-making is confidence, not arrogance, not recklessness, but the calm self-belief that you are capable of choosing well, adapting when wrong, and correcting without shame. Many people delay decisions because they seek approval. They second-guess. They hand power to others. The Stoic strategist holds his power close. He listens, he considers, but in the end, he decides. He does not ask for certainty from the world. He draws it from within, and when things go wrong, as they sometimes will, he does not collapse. He learns, he adjusts, and he chooses again. Strategic decision-making is not about perfection. It is about alignment. It is about discipline. It is about consistency over chaos, reason over reaction, clarity over confusion. It is the commitment to think deeply, act decisively, and move forward with both vision and responsibility. It is the art of leading yourself well, even before you lead others. Those who master this art do not wander. They walk with purpose. They do not chase every opportunity. They choose the few that matter and pursue them with focus. They do not fear mistakes because they trust their ability to recover. And they do not surrender their future to chance because every step they take is a deliberate act of authorship. In the next chapter, we will explore strategic leadership, how to inspire, guide, and align others toward shared purpose. Because once you master decisions for yourself, the next evolution is learning to lead others with the same clarity, composure, and intent. Chapter 12. Strategic Leadership, Guiding with Vision, Influence, and Precision. Leadership is not about titles, positions, or the illusion of control. It is not granted by a badge, enforced by authority, or measured by how many people report to you. True leadership is quiet power. It is the ability to influence, to guide, to elevate. It is the force that transforms vision into movement, uncertainty into clarity, and individuals into a united, capable force. The Stoic strategist knows that leadership is not a birthright. It is a practice, a set of disciplines that, when mastered, turn an ordinary person into a builder of movements, an architect of direction, and a steward of legacy. At the foundation of strategic leadership lies vision. Not short-term targets or reactionary plans, but a long horizon that provides meaning. Too many confuse leadership with management. They focus on maintaining order, fixing problems, and reacting to the day-to-day. But the leader sees beyond today. He crafts a picture of what could be, of what must be, and then walks others toward it. Without vision, a team moves, but does not grow. It works, but it does not believe. The strategic leader ensures that every decision, every project, every sacrifice aligns with something greater. He does not allow motion without meaning. He does not tolerate activity without direction. But having vision is not enough. It must be communicated with clarity and conviction. A leader who cannot articulate his vision cannot expect others to follow. Strategic leadership is not about issuing commands. It is about painting a picture so vivid that others are drawn into it. The Stoic leader understands that influence is not built on noise, but on resonance. He speaks in a way that lands deeply. He adapts his message to the audience in front of him, whether they are teammates, executives, clients, or skeptics. He listens not to respond, but to understand. He communicates not to impress, but to connect. Trust is the currency of leadership, and it is not given easily. It is earned daily in the small decisions and the unseen moments. Strategic leaders know that their credibility is built not through charisma, but through consistency. They do not preach accountability. They embody it. They do not shift blame. They shoulder responsibility. They understand that people do not follow words. They follow example. And especially in moments of uncertainty or adversity, the way a leader acts becomes the standard for everyone watching. The Stoic leader holds himself to a higher standard not for applause, but because he knows leadership is not about what you say, it is about who you are when no one is looking. One of the most defining tests of leadership is decision-making under uncertainty. Many shy away from leadership because they fear choosing wrong. But leadership is not about perfection. It is about making the best decision possible with the information available, committing to it fully and adjusting when necessary. The best leaders are not flawless. They are flexible. They are not reckless. They are decisive. They know that inaction often carries more risk than a well-informed mistake. And they are never too proud to pivot when the facts demand it. They do not cling to being right. They commit to doing what is right for the mission. Leadership is also the art of influence. The weak leader gives orders. The wise one builds alignment. He understands what motivates people. He understands how to create buy-in, not through pressure, but through shared purpose. He does not rely on authority. He uses persuasion, empathy, and empowerment. He invites people into ownership. He connects their personal goals with the greater vision. He recognizes the unique strengths of his team, cultivates them, and places each person where they can thrive. The best leaders do not pull others forward, they make others want to move. But where people work together, conflict is inevitable. Strategic leaders do not fear it. They do not avoid difficult conversations or sweep disagreements under the rug. They meet conflict with composure. They seek understanding before judgment. They turn tension into clarity and debate into growth. They create a culture where differences are not threats, but catalysts for innovation. Where hard truths are not suppressed, but welcomed as tools for sharpening the collective mind. The Stoic leader remains unmoved by ego. He does not take disagreement personally. He directs energy away from blame and toward resolution. Another hallmark of great leadership is the ability to develop and empower others. Many leaders fall into the trap of trying to do everything themselves, thinking that control equals excellence. But true leadership is not about personal achievement. It is about enabling others to perform at their highest level. The strategist builds people. He mentors with intention. He trains successors. He delegates not just tasks, but ownership. He does not seek to be irreplaceable. He seeks to be impactful. And the real test of his leadership is not how the team performs when he is present, but how it thrives in his absence. Leadership is also about having the courage to make difficult decisions, even when they are unpopular. Many compromise vision to maintain harmony, but strategic leaders are not here to please everyone. They are here to protect the mission. They do not avoid discomfort. They carry it with grace. They communicate hard truths with compassion. They are empathetic, but not easily swayed. They lead from principle, not popularity. And over time, even those who once disagreed learn to respect the clarity and consistency of their direction. One of the most underestimated qualities of strategic leadership is resilience. Leadership comes with pressure, with scrutiny, with failure. The weight is real, and many collapse under it. But the Stoic leader stands firm, not because he feels no fear, but because he refuses to be ruled by it. He develops mental toughness, emotional control, and an unshakable connection to the mission. He accepts that setbacks are part of the path. that criticism is part of visibility, that failure is part of growth. He does not seek comfort, he seeks truth. And in doing so, he becomes the still point in the storm, the one others look to when everything else begins to shake. Ultimately, strategic leadership is the culmination of vision, communication, trust, decisiveness, influence, conflict resolution, development of others, and inner resilience. It is not about accumulating followers. It is about creating clarity. It is not about controlling people. It is about calling them to a higher standard. The best leaders are not remembered for how many people obeyed them. They are remembered for how many people they lifted. To lead strategically is to carry both weight and wisdom. It is to see farther, speak clearer, and act with deeper intent. It is to recognize that every word, every choice, and every silence becomes an example. It is to become the kind of person whose presence changes the atmosphere, whose calm creates order, whose courage creates movement, and whose discipline turns ordinary groups into extraordinary forces. In the next chapter, we will explore strategic adaptability, how to remain flexible without losing focus, how to anticipate change and use it as leverage, and how to ensure that your leadership, your vision, and your strategy stay relevant in a world that never stops evolving. Chapter 13. Stay fluid, lead through change. Change is not the enemy. It is not a disruption to be feared or a force to be resisted. It is the nature of life itself. Everything that endures adapts, and everything that fails to adapt fades. In business, leadership, and personal growth, the only constant is transformation. And in a world that refuses to stand still, strategic adaptability is not just a competitive edge, it is a survival imperative. The Stoic strategist does not resist the winds of change. He studies them, he harnesses them, he turns them into propulsion. He does not aim to control the uncontrollable, but to remain anchored in purpose while flexible in method. He does not merely survive disruption. He turns it into design, into momentum, into power. Adaptability is often misunderstood. Many confuse it with inconsistency or weakness. They believe that holding the same path, clinging to the original plan, and never changing course is a sign of strength. But the oak tree that resists the storm snaps, while the reed that bends survives. Strategic adaptability is not about abandoning strategy. It's about keeping the mission clear while evolving the execution. It's about knowing when to hold firm and when to reinvent. It's about adjusting without losing direction and evolving without losing identity. One of the greatest barriers to adaptability is fear. Fear of the unknown, fear of failure, fear of losing what is familiar. Most people are more loyal to their comfort than to their growth. They resist change because it challenges their assumptions and threatens their habits. Organizations do the same. They protect outdated systems, old ways of working, and past success formulas, even when they are clearly decaying. Strategic thinkers confront this fear with intention. They reframe change not as a threat, but as a catalyst. Not as something to endure, but as something to lead. They build cultures of curiosity, where people are encouraged to ask what is next, instead of clinging to what has always been. They reward experimentation. They treat mistakes as necessary signals, not punishable offenses. They encourage questions, welcome new thinking, and challenge the comfort zone with purpose. They do not wait for crisis to force adaptation. They create the conditions to evolve before the environment demands it. One of the most essential practices in adaptability is scanning the horizon. Change does not always arrive with a crash. Often, it arrives quietly in small signals, subtle shifts, overlooked trends. The strategist trains his eyes and ears to notice early indicators. He watches customer behavior, observes market dynamics, follows emerging technologies, and pays attention to rising cultural undercurrents. He looks beyond his own industry for patterns and insights. He studies systems, not symptoms. He does not react to change when it is obvious. He prepares for it while it is still invisible to most. But external awareness is only part of the equation. True adaptability also requires internal flexibility. Many people recognize change intellectually but struggle to act on it emotionally. They are trapped by ego, by attachment to their own ideas, by fear of being wrong. The Stoic thinker frees himself from this prison. He values truth over pride, effectiveness over familiarity. He is not afraid to abandon a failing method. He is not ashamed to admit that what once worked no longer serves. His identity is not tied to being right. It is tied to doing what works. He creates an environment where ideas are tested, not protected, where feedback is welcomed, not feared, where pivots are signs of intelligence, not instability. He understands that to adapt is not to fail. It is to evolve. It is to remain alive to the world as it is, not as we wish it were. Speed is also vital. Many lose the adaptability game not because they are unaware of change, but because they move too slowly. They hesitate. They overthink. They wait for perfect information or ideal timing. But in a dynamic world, hesitation is decay. Strategic adaptability demands movement, fast testing, rapid execution, immediate iteration. Progress does not come from endless discussion. It comes from acting, learning, adjusting, and moving again. The strategist values motion over perfection. He knows that the first version may be flawed, but the worst version is the one never launched. Resilience is what sustains adaptability through uncertainty. Not every pivot works. Not every change yields instant results. The weak retreat at the first sign of ambiguity. The strong stay the course while refining it. Strategic thinkers accept that discomfort is part of growth, that setbacks are part of testing, that failure is part of the learning loop. They do not panic when the new strategy hits turbulence. They remain grounded, process the feedback, adjust the variables, and continue forward with discipline. They know that adaptability is not a moment, it is a mindset. Another pillar of adaptability is surrounding oneself with diversity of thought. Many people live in echo chambers. They speak only to those who think like them, read what confirms their beliefs, and follow paths already familiar. This breeds blindness. Strategic minds break out of that mold. They seek out conversations with thinkers from different industries, different cultures, and different schools of thought. They learn from artists, scientists, engineers, philosophers, and contrarians. They engage with unfamiliar ideas, not to agree with them, but to expand their lens. Breakthroughs often come from unexpected intersections. New perspectives shake old patterns. The Stoic leader listens not for validation, but for insight. He surrounds himself with people who challenge his thinking, not those who merely echo it. And in doing so, he remains mentally agile and intellectually alive. Proactivity is another defining trait. Reactive people wait for change to become urgent. Strategic thinkers anticipate it and initiate it. They ask themselves how they can disrupt their own systems before the market does, how they can redesign before competitors innovate, how they can evolve while still ahead rather than scrambling from behind. They are never satisfied with what works. They are always improving what could work better. Their standard is not survival, it is growth. At the heart of this adaptability is a deep commitment to lifelong learning. The strategist sees himself not as an expert, but as a student. He reads, reflects, experiments, and upgrades his mind continuously. He questions his assumptions. He updates his frameworks. He understands that staying relevant requires staying curious. He does not fear having to relearn. He fears being the last to realize that what he knows is no longer useful. Adaptability is not passive response. It is deliberate evolution. It is the willingness to look at your plan, your process, and even your identity and say, "This must change." It is the discipline to listen to the signs, to act before forced, and to pivot with strength instead of breaking under pressure. In the end, strategic adaptability is the art of remaining stable in vision while fluid in approach. It is not about losing your core. It is about refining your method. It is about learning faster than the world moves, shifting before the storm hits, and using every change as a lever instead of a threat. Those who master it do not merely survive the future, they shape it. In the next chapter, we will explore the power of strategic influence. How to persuade not with force, but with wisdom. How to shape decisions not through domination, but through alignment. Because once you have mastered adaptability, the next step is influencing others to move with you toward a future that you have not just imagined, but already begun to build. Chapter 14. Lead minds. Move worlds with influence. Influence is not loud, it is not forceful, it does not rely on hierarchy, threats, or dominance. True influence is silent strength. It is the art of guiding without forcing, of moving people not through coercion, but through clarity. It is the invisible power that shapes decisions, builds alliances, and alters outcomes. The Stoic strategist understands that the most powerful person in the room is not the one who speaks the most, but the one whose words carry weight, whose presence shifts the energy, and whose integrity builds trust before a word is spoken. Influence begins with credibility. People do not follow titles, they follow trust. They are not swayed by empty charisma, but by the presence of someone who delivers, someone whose words match their actions, someone who can be counted on in silence as much as in speech. Strategic influence is earned, never assumed. It is forged over time, not through performance but through consistency. Those who influence deeply are those who live by principle, who speak only when their words are rooted in wisdom, and who never need to announce their value because their reputation speaks louder than they ever could. At the heart of credibility lies trust, and trust is built not in moments of performance, but in moments of pressure. When you promise and deliver, when you speak truth even when it costs you, when you act in alignment with what you claim to believe. The strategist knows that the moment trust is compromised, influence dissolves. He is meticulous with integrity, not for the sake of appearance, but because he knows that nothing endures without it. He does not exaggerate his capacity. He does not overpromise or manipulate. He becomes a source of clarity in a world full of noise. But influence is not only about who you are. It is also about how you understand others. People do not make decisions based solely on logic. They are guided by perception, emotion, and internal biases. Strategic influencers understand the architecture of human judgment. They do not speak only to the mind. They speak to the story, to the emotion, to the identity of the person in front of them. They know that facts, when delivered without empathy or relevance, fall flat. So they frame truth in stories. They show how action aligns with values. They speak in terms of benefit and belief, not just evidence and data. One of the most powerful tools of influence is the question, not the kind that interrogates, but the kind that opens. The Stoic influencer does not seek to overpower an opposing view. He seeks to guide it gently, to lead it to its own conclusion. He asks questions that stir reflection, that bypass defenses, that help others arrive at the insight themselves. And when a person believes they have discovered the truth on their own, their commitment to it deepens. Influence then becomes a matter of empowerment, not persuasion. Another timeless principle is reciprocity. People are wired to return value where it has been generously given. The strategist gives first. He offers insights. He provides solutions. He serves others before asking for anything in return. But he does so not to manipulate, but to create real connection. Strategic influence is never transactional. It is relational. Those who give with sincerity earn the right to ask with confidence, and those who always take without giving eventually lose the ear of the room. Social proof and perceived authority also shape how people respond. Humans look to others for cues, especially when unsure. They seek validation in numbers and reassurance in expert voices. The strategist does not simply claim expertise, he demonstrates it. Through results, through experience, through visible alignment with respected peers. He does not boast, he shows. He tells stories of past impact, shares testimonials, and provides tangible proof. He aligns with credible names not to borrow power, but to reinforce it. People listen when the message is not only clear, but reinforced by evidence and respected voices. Another powerful psychological force is scarcity. People respond more urgently when they believe an opportunity is limited or fleeting. The strategic influencer uses this principle wisely. He does not manufacture pressure, he simply reveals truth. That timing matters, that momentum fades, that some chances do not return, but he does so with calm authority, not hype. The tone is not desperate, but decisive. The message is not manipulative, but real. He invites urgency not through fear, but through focused timing. Adaptability is also a mark of mastery. Not every audience is persuaded by the same language. Some require data, others respond to emotional resonance. Some need step-by-step logic, others want to feel inspired. The strategist reads the room. He listens before he speaks. He tailors his message without diluting it. He adjusts his delivery, his tone, his structure to meet the mindset in front of him. He understands that influence is not about speaking your truth louder. It is about connecting your truth to the listener's reality. This ability to adapt creates bridges. It allows the influencer to reach people across worldviews, roles, and beliefs. It enables conversations where walls might otherwise rise. The Stoic strategist does not impose his views. He invites alignment. He is flexible in method, firm in purpose. He does not push. He draws people in. But influence, to be enduring, must outlast the moment. Many people persuade temporarily, but lose trust over time because their methods are shallow or manipulative. Strategic influence is built for longevity. It is rooted in reputation. It is reinforced by integrity. It is sustained through service. The person who speaks with depth, who advises with care, who shows up reliably, earns not just attention, but trust. And when people trust you, they come to you not just for answers, but for clarity. Not just for decisions, but for direction. Strategic influence is not about saying the right thing in the moment. It is about becoming the kind of person whose presence alters the room, whose words are listened to not because they are loud, but because they come from someone who listens first, whose insight lands not because it is polished, but because it is honest. Influence is about presence, about perception, and most of all, about the quiet consistency of character that makes people trust you when it matters most. To influence strategically is to move the world with your mind, not your might. It is to guide without gripping, to convince without overpowering, and to lead others not by force, but by truth. It is a skill anyone can build, but few ever refine. It requires patience, integrity, clarity, and the unwavering discipline to never trade short-term compliance for long-term respect. Those who master influence do not just navigate relationships or win negotiations. They shape environments, they build movements, they shift culture. Their presence changes how others see themselves, what they believe is possible, and what they are willing to do. And that is the essence of power, not dominance, but transformation. In the final chapter, we will explore how all of this converges into legacy, how strategy, resilience, leadership, adaptability, and influence culminate in the creation of something larger than yourself. Because the highest aim of strategic thinking is not to win every moment, but to leave behind a path so strong it shapes others long after you are gone. Chapter 15: Strategic Legacy: Building Impact that Outlives You. Strategic thinking is not simply about solving immediate problems or navigating present challenges. It is not merely the art of outmaneuvering competition or making smart choices in the moment. At its highest form, strategic thinking is a commitment to legacy. It is the discipline of thinking beyond the self, beyond the current cycle, and even beyond one's own lifetime. The Stoic strategist does not measure success in trophies or titles. He measures it in transformation, in the ripple effects of decisions that echo far into the future, in the systems, values, and minds he shapes long after his own work is done. Legacy is not about being remembered. It is not about fame or monument. Legacy is the silent force of continued value. It is what remains and continues to give when you are no longer present to claim credit. The true strategic thinker asks, what am I building that will endure? What am I contributing that will still serve others long after I am gone? Who am I empowering, teaching, or equipping to continue the work and expand the vision? He does not seek applause. He seeks continuity. He does not chase visibility. He builds impact that speaks without needing to be seen. The most enduring legacies in history did not come from those who simply solved problems for themselves. They came from those who created tools, philosophies, institutions, and models that allowed others to solve problems long after they had passed. They built frameworks, not just victories. They taught others how to think, not just what to do. Their wisdom was not in the noise they created, but in the clarity they left behind. One of the most powerful forms of strategic legacy is mentorship. Many believe that hoarding knowledge gives them an advantage. They guard their insights, their techniques, their strategies, as if their power will diminish by sharing it. But the Stoic strategist knows otherwise. Knowledge grows only when it is passed on. Wisdom multiplies only when it is transferred. True influence is measured not by what you achieve alone, but by what you teach others to achieve without you. Mentorship is not just giving advice, it is modeling excellence. It is investing time to elevate others. It is planting seeds in minds that will produce fruit you will never see. It is shaping future leaders who will think sharper, decide better, and act with greater integrity because of your influence. Strategic legacy is built in classrooms, boardrooms, conversations, and small moments of insight shared without the need for recognition. Legacy is also built through systems that outlast you. Many leaders design everything around themselves. The strategy depends on their presence. The execution relies on their approval. The culture follows their mood. This is not strategy. This is dependence disguised as leadership. The true strategist builds systems that breathe on their own. He creates organizations that remain resilient when leadership changes. He designs processes, structures, and philosophies that continue even when his name fades from the building. He embeds wisdom in culture, not in instruction manuals. A strategic legacy must also include innovation. It is easy to succeed by following trends, by doing what others have already proven works. But those who leave a legacy do not play the existing game. They invent a new one. They question assumptions, challenge the dominant logic, and ask different questions. What is the world missing? What pain has no name yet? What truth has not yet been voiced? They do not copy what works. They create what is needed. Their impact is not reactive, it is revolutionary. The ones who change the world do not only adapt to change, they shape it. They are not simply masters of the current system, they are the architects of the next one. Their vision expands the field, their courage creates space, their innovation does not fade with the market trend. It becomes the new standard that others follow. But perhaps the deepest foundation of strategic legacy is character. The world is full of individuals who rise fast and fall faster. They succeed through ruthlessness, gain power through manipulation, and build influence through fear, but their legacy crumbles as quickly as it rose. Because true legacy is built on integrity. It is the influence that grows quietly because it is rooted in values. The strategist does not trade character for temporary success. He knows that how you win matters as much as whether you win. The most powerful legacies are those that uplift others, that improve the world, that show others that power can be wielded without cruelty, that success can be earned without deception, and that influence can be rooted in principle rather than performance. The Stoic leader lives by ethics that do not shift with opportunity. He is not flawless, but he is faithful to truth. And in doing so, he builds trust that endures longer than applause ever could. Resilience is another pillar of legacy. Many abandon their long-term vision because they confuse slow progress with failure. They expect immediate validation, and when it does not come, they pivot too soon or give up entirely. But those who leave something meaningful behind understand that great work takes time. Masterpieces are not rushed. Movements are not built in a moment. Legacy is not built in comfort. It is forged through persistence. They endure setbacks, disappointments, and long periods where no one notices their effort. But they keep going. Because their purpose is not external approval. It is internal clarity. They know what they are building. They know why it matters. And they trust the process even when others do not yet see the results. This quiet persistence is what turns moments into movements and intentions into institutions. Collaboration is also central to legacy. No great legacy is built alone. The greatest thinkers surround themselves with people who challenge, expand, and sharpen their ideas. They build alliances that amplify the vision. They foster partnerships that outlive their own involvement. They are generous with success, sharing credit and opportunity with others. Because they are not building an empire for their own glory. They are building ecosystems where others can rise, lead, and contribute their genius to something greater than themselves. Lastly, strategic legacy demands that you think beyond what is immediately possible. Many limit their ambition to what seems practical or achievable in the short term. But the Stoic strategist dares to ask larger questions. What if I could create something that redefines an entire field? What if my life's work could elevate lives I will never meet? What if my thoughts and actions today could trigger a chain of growth that lasts for generations? They do not think in projects, they think in paradigm shifts. They are not obsessed with being big, they are committed to becoming deep. At the end of the day, the measure of strategic thinking is not in how clever your plan was or how many victories you scored. It is in what you left behind, the people you elevated, the systems you built, the wisdom you passed on, the world you made better, even slightly. That is legacy, not ego, not memory, but momentum that continues when you are no longer needed to push it. The Stoic strategist does not chase legacy for recognition. He builds it through discipline, through thought that extends beyond his lifetime, through choices that are less about reward and more about responsibility. And in doing so, he becomes more than successful. He becomes significant. You now understand the entire journey of strategic thought, from clarity to decision, from leadership to adaptability, from influence to legacy. And now the question remains, what will you do with that understanding? What will you shape? What will you leave behind? Because in the end, the power of strategic thinking is not that it changes your life. It is that it gives you the power to change the lives of others long after yours has passed. True strategic thinkers do not simply move through life. They shape it, they refine it. They leave behind systems, ideas, and quiet influence that continue long after they are gone. As you reflect on everything we've explored, from clarity and problem-solving to resilience, influence, and legacy, ask yourself not if you can think strategically, but how you will use that ability now. Because the world is not moved by noise. It is moved by those who dare to think deeply, act with intention, and leave behind more than they take. If this journey has sparked something in you, consider subscribing and continuing to walk this path of discipline, foresight, and inner strength. Drop your thoughts below with just 2 words. Think bigger. And remember, this is not the end. The next chapter begins with your next decision. Stay ready, stay